Today I'd like to do a deep dive in why almost everyone seems to have a really difficult time getting over breakups. I've got some thoughts, but first we need to understand what the heck is going on in your body during a breakup for me to fully explain my thoughts. I want you to take a look at this graphic. This is basically a visual representation of the many different chemicals your brain is releasing, basically the neurochemistry of what's going on inside of your body at the beginning of a relationship. Now I want you to take special note of how dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin are really high. And for your reference, dopamine basically mediates pleasure, affects motor skills, improves memory. Norepinephrine triggers the release of glucose into the bloodstream and increases blood pressure, heart rate, mental awareness, respiratory rate, basically prepares fight or flight responses. And serotonin is basically a mood balancer. It's going to regulate your appetite, aid in digestion, regulate sleep, things of that nature. So these three chemicals are often why the honeymoon period is so potent. But let's take a look at what happens to those chemicals in the middle of a relationship. So here you're going to notice that dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin have come down, but oxytocin, also known as the cuddle hormone, and vasopressin, it inspires pair bonding. It's really that pair bonding aspect that's of note. You know, the honeymoon period kind of wears off, everything's not sunshine and rainbows anymore, but you feel stronger together as a couple. You're bonding together as a pair. But the real horror doesn't really begin until the breakup occurs. Here's a look at the neurochemistry of your body during a breakup. Basically, all chemicals go way down with the exception of cortisol. And cortisol is why I believe so many people struggle with breakups. Cortisol, of course, is basically known as the stress hormone. And it's going to be at the vanguard of pretty much every crazy behavior that you're experiencing post-breakup. You know, lack of motivation, fatigue, mood swings, memory problems, inability to concentrate, sleep problems, loss of appetite. All of these have their issues rooted in the fact that your cortisol is really high. In fact, last week I recently filmed a video talking about cortisol during the no contact rule. And some of the findings that I found when I was researching that video are quite relevant to the discussion that we're having right now. I stumbled across this website called Health Quotient, and I saw this quote by Dr. Jamie Lee. It can take 3 to 4 hours for your cortisol levels to return to normal after a stress response, you know, like an argument or a high stakes meeting. But if your levels have been high for some time, it can take up to 6 months to balance them out. So essentially my argument is simple. If your cortisol stays at an elevated rate, it's going to be so much more difficult for you to get over a breakup. I believe that going through a breakup in today's landscape makes life so much more difficult than it actually needs to be. And to prove that point, I'd like to take a look at this beautiful landscape. So we have one piece of this very complicated puzzle, cortisol. But the other piece of the puzzle that is going to be important for this discussion is understanding our environment. And for that, we're going to look at some statistics from Tech Jury. So there are 4.76 billion, with a B, social media users, which are 59.4% of the entire world's population. So basically 60% of the people you see walking around are connected on social media. Now the average user of social media will spend about 2.5 hours a day on it. In fact, teens showed an increase in their daily screen time from 7 hours and 22 minutes to 8 hours and 39 minutes. 26% of these social media platform users are going to be aged between, well, the ages of 18 and 29, and half of our time on our phones in 2022 is basically reserved for social media. So here's why I believe that the average client that comes through our program has such a difficult time getting over a breakup. They can't help themselves from checking up on their ex on social media. And guess what happens every single time that they do check up on their ex on social media? Well, those cortisol levels continue to stay in that elevated state. They're spying on their ex. So let's go through a fun little thought experiment. Let's say that it's day 7 post-breakup. Your cortisol levels have finally begun to dissipate. They're coming down. But there's a gnawing feeling inside. You just have to find out what your ex is up to. So you log on to Facebook or Instagram or what have you. You go to their profile and see something that triggers you. All of a sudden your cortisol levels that were beginning to dissipate spike back up. Now, this process repeats over and over and over again until your body gets used to those cortisol levels being in that elevated state.